We are back. We're on Woof Radio, RadioNext.tv at the Cool Groove site. Thanks for joining us on Facebook Live. And for those of you on earbuds right now, we're grateful for your attendance as well. Later on, those of you who pick up the podcast will be able to hear all of what we have to say. Not during the break, though. During the break, Facebook Live, if you want that, then you click on the archived copy of that. We join you every Wednesday from 11 to 11:50. Glad to be back here again with you this week. Comenius Institute is our sponsor. At Comenius, we cross 3 bridges. The first bridge we cross is into college at IUPUI, where I spend time with Christian young people, helping them to think Christianly about their studies, their subjects, their disciplines. And then the second bridge we cross is into communities, which is what we're doing right now, crossing communities into inviting Christians who are doing good based on Titus 3, 1, 8, and 14, doing good in and around the Indianapolis community. And then our third bridge is into culture, and the cultural connections are constant. This usually comes through my writing, and weekly, if you'd like to subscribe to our YouTube channel, you can pick these things up as soon as they come out. They're called Truth in 2, 2-minute videos which give a Christian truth in 2 minutes. Glad to do all of those things on behalf of the Comenius Institute, which I'm the president, and grateful also for those who help us out. Harold H.B. Bell behind the scenes right now producing this show. Then we have Polly Riddell, who is our Chief Connections Officer, and Josh Collingwood, who takes care of all of our digitization of everything online. We're grateful for all of their help. Thankful for our board, all of the good folks that support us. Thanks ever so much for all of that. Every week, we bring to you a different individual, interviewing them from around Indianapolis. And today, we're really grateful to have Matt Williams with us. Matt comes to us from Athletes in Action, and we're going to be asking him some questions about what it is he does, his mission, his vision for the future. But we're grateful for your time here today, Matt. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Eck. I appreciate it.
So the issue of where you come from, your biography. Give us a little bit of background, your family, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, I'll give it a short version. So I was born and raised in South Carolina, so always consider myself a Southern boy at heart, and graduated from Clemson University. But to backtrack a little bit, grew up in a Christian household, but at a bit of my testimony, my story is that when I was 9, my dad passed away. Was killed in a car accident. And so the reason I share that is because it does tie into kind of where I am today.
Sure.
Because after that, I really was searching for something to apply myself to where I could really receive affirmation and praise. And I found that in sports, specifically. And I wrestled and also played soccer, which is kind of a weird combination. But yeah, I put a lot of my energy and my effort into that. Loved it, but unfortunately, got to a place where, for my soul, I realized it wasn't going to deliver what I had hoped for. So I came to really know the Lord in college through the ministry of Cru, or Campus Crusade for Christ, which Athletes in Action is a part of. So that's a real quick story on kind of where I came from.
Yeah. How about family? You gotta say good things about your wife.
Absolutely.
Come on, man.
Family now. I am married. Married for actually this coming up weekend. We're going on our 5-year anniversary trip.
Congratulations.
To Chicago.
Nice.
And we have 2 little kids, 3 and 1. So life is full.
Yeah.
A lot going on.
Yeah, and you're also a student.
I am. Yeah, a new student. I'm taking your class this summer. Is my first class with ITS, Indianapolis Theological Seminary, and really enjoying it. So.
Good. Yeah. Well, we'll of course make sure that ITS gets a shout out. But I'm glad you're enjoying this class. That's a good thing. It'd be a bummer if you
start with something.
Yeah, right. So we're really glad that you're here. Obviously, you have something to bring to the table here because of your background in sports personally, but you also have something in terms of Athletes in Action, which is really, maybe for some people, brand new. So tell us about Athletes in Action. What does that mean? What do you do? Maybe some of the background, the history, mission, vision, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned previously, Athletes in Action is a ministry of Cru. The short story on how it got started was Bill Bright, Dr. Bill Bright, who was the founder of Campus Crusade. Someone came to his office, and back in the 60s and 70s, kind of height of the Cold War, Dr. Bright, back then and even his whole life, had a real heart for Russia, for USSR, for reaching those people. And so someone came to him with this crazy idea and said, Dr. Bright, what if we got a bunch of wrestlers together and
I love it
sent
already.
them over to the USSR, where wrestling is a huge deal, and then we could share our faith with them? And Dr. Bright said, that's a great idea. You raise the money, you can go do it.
Nice.
And so they ended up doing it. They took some wrestlers. I don't know the full details of the story, but they took some wrestlers over and did some awesome ministry. And so in 1966, Athletes in Action was formed.
How about that?
And so today, the vision, broadly speaking, for AIA is that there would be a Christ follower on every sport, every team, and every nation.
Wow. That's huge.
Yeah.
That has such an impact. And you also work specifically with athletes on the campus of IUPUI, correct?
So our scope includes IUPUI. We aren't yet at IUPUI. We're historically here in Indianapolis have been just at Butler. So for the past 20 plus years, we've been at Butler, and I've been in my role for 2 years. And so we're trying to build on that history, as well as work with other ministries. There's an FCA locally that does some ministry on those campuses as well. Our real focus and heart is to disciple Christian athletes, especially. We do want to reach athletes, but especially disciple and equip those athletes to be able to live out their faith amongst their teammates.
Yeah, that's really great. I remember some of the stories, mostly because I'm a lot older than you are, but I remember some of the stories of U.S. wrestlers going to the USSR, and I remember some of those old Iowa boys. Dan, I can't remember his last name.
Dan Gable.
There you go, Dan Gable. And, some of the stories of those wrestlers and the kinds of impact that they had around the world and still do.
They're still AIA wrestling. They're touring right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
Wow. He's got to be older.
Well, not Dan, but
I was going to say,
new
guys. Okay. Yeah. I mean, this has tremendous impact, I remember. And of course, during the Cold War, as you already mentioned, this was a big deal. Yeah. That we would have athletes that would, just go themselves to the USSR. And,
sure.
All the rest of us are back here wondering if they'll be in the gulag, or whatever. Right. And so those were, that's really a pretty neat history. And I hadn't heard the story about a bunch of wrestlers go to Bill Bright and say that to him. What a great story that is. Yeah, let's send a bunch of wrestlers and go evangelize. Oh, man, that's funny.
No problems there.
No problem.
They're wrong.
Yeah. But think about that, and this is something I've read on AIA's website, and I've heard you talk about this before, how really sports is so woven through our culture that this is kind of like a no-brainer to do something like this.
To someone like me, it is, and I know everybody's got their niche, things they're passionate about, but I think there's so much about, especially when you talk about, 2019 United States of America, but even globally, sports. I heard a great quote from a former NBA commissioner who said that really the three things that influence culture either reflect or build culture are fashion, music, and sports. And that's coming from a former NBA commissioner, right?
Wow.
And it's very plain to see when you actually look at the culture, especially when you start to talk about what are college students interested in, who are they listening to, who are they following on social media, those kind of things. So sports is a way, it's a vehicle, if you will, into people's lives. So it's an opportunity.
Well, you get those kind of stick on the wall personages, famous football players or whatever. I've forgotten.
Fatheads. Yeah.
So I've never
seen those as a kid.
I've never seen fatheads of our local pastors. Okay, pastors and missionaries don't get put up there, but athletes do. Yeah. I mean, this is a big deal to kids. So, what is it about being an athlete and little kids looking up to them and going, I want to be like that, or I want this person on my wall so I can see them every day and I aspire to this? What is it, do you think, that kind of makes people as it relates to athletics?
I really think that people love witnessing greatness.
Oh, that's a great line, man. Have you written anything on that? You need to write about that.
No, I have not. But, I remember this was actually back in 2012. I was in the country of El Salvador for 5-6 weeks on a mission trip with some college students going on campus. But we were there in the middle of the Olympics. And I was putting together a message for one of our meetings. And it just struck me because the opening ceremonies had just happened. The opening ceremonies, you have all the nations coming in with their flags, and they're all happy to be there. And to me, it just was this incredible picture of, revelation. And at the end of this life now, as the new life ushers in, right, that all the tribe, tongue, and nations will stand before the throne and worship the Lord.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that, but I was also thinking about, man, why do we love the Olympics so much? There's just something about it. And I just think there's something that's woven into us, I think from God, that when we witness something physically happen that's great, there's just something that there's an awestruckness that happens. And I think, if someone with a Christian worldview who's pursuing their sport and doing that for greatness, not for themselves, right? Because that's the edge, if you will.
Yes.
Where it pivots. Is it going to become about yourself and your own glory? Yeah. Or is it going to be a mirror or a reflection back to the one who gave me this talent?
Right.
Back to Yahweh, back to God. Yeah. And so that's just kind of some thoughts I have on that.
That your line there about everybody aspires to greatness. What is it?
Everybody loves witnessing greatness.
Everybody loves witnessing greatness. You gotta write on that, man. Seriously, that's a great line. That ought to be like a poster or some kind of ad or billboard or something.
Sure, someone said it already.
Oh, come on. No, seriously. Pick this thing up and run with it. Now, that's really a great line, and it really does speak to the issue of maybe why I sit on every Sunday afternoon and watch NFL football. I mean, I love NFL football.
Sure.
And that's, to me, it's this marvelous opportunity to see people who are really good at what they do. Plus I like to see people hit each other. So, there's
a win-win.
It's a win-win. So there's all of these kinds of things going on in Mark's mind. So for those of you watching Facebook Live right now, you're going, I didn't really know this about him. I'm not sure if this is good.
Former football player.
That's right. Former football player. So the whole concept, though, of being consumed by and really appreciating greatness and the opportunity to aspire to this. This gives young people something to fashion their lives on, if you will. Think about that in what you do now. When you're talking about college students and the kinds of folks that you're working with, who do they aspire to be and who do they watch and listen to? Are they athletes or are they other people? Talk about that.
That's a deep question. I would say definitely for college athletes, for many of them, they are dreaming of making it to the next level. Some of them are a little bit more realistic and understand that statistically they're not going to make it to the next level or whatnot. But they definitely look up to those pro athletes. You think about the U.S. Women's World Cup,
right?
Just on, right?
Yeah, just recently.
So it's just to think about how young, even younger than college students, look up to. I think there's that happens. A lot of college students listen to other voices in pop culture, whether it be people in the musical genre or fashion or the ones that you go, wait, why are they a celebrity? I don't even know why, right?
Yeah,
the Kardashians, right?
Oh, everybody thinks immediately.
What do they actually do? I don't know. There's a lot of, and what's hard, I think, somewhat in the ministry we do is there's so many voices today. Social media is a tool, right? It's a great tool to voice your thoughts and your concerns and what you have.
Right.
Praise God for that. I think that's a great thing about
the
country we live in, that we have the freedom to voice what we think. But then it becomes so much, not noise, it's kind of noise, but it just becomes so much that, college students especially are just constantly bombarded by all kinds of voices and messages and whatnot throughout their days and their weeks.
Do you have, so talking about the voice issue and listening to people, do you have meetings that they attend, that kind of thing, or do you go and interact with them personally, small group? How does that happen?
Yeah, it's kind of a mix of things. So we do have meetings that, especially as we think about creating a place or space where someone can step in and kind of almost be a fly on the wall and kind of go, okay, what is this Christian thing about, right? They're not going to take time to go to church,
right.
Or they can't go to church
or they can't because they're in competition,
right?
Yep.
So we do want to create those spaces, but I would say primarily for us, the desire is to more be moving towards others. So like for staff, like someone like myself, my job and my desire is to disciple and equip the athletes who are with us, involved with us, so that first they would love the Lord with their whole heart, soul, mind, right? And that out of that they would be able to overflow out towards their teammates, and that they would have a mentality or a mindset of, I'm going to pursue this person. Because I think another thing that people really desire, regardless of a lot of things, is I think we all really want to be pursued. There's just something in us that wants to be pursued, wants to be included, cared for, and so something we talk about with our students is, even if you're not necessarily preaching the gospel at them or whatnot, but if you're just pursuing them, you're just asking them questions about their life, who they are, where they came from, some of the deeper things beyond just their sport.
Right.
I think that really opens doors.
These are fantastic ideas that we're talking about here with Matt Williams from Athletes in Action. One of the things that interests me about what it is that you do has to do with the athletic contests themselves. So do you ever participate in any kind of athletics currently, or do you attend their meets, games, whatever?
Yeah, we try to. We try to go to games. Obviously, that's a great starting point. But even beyond that, try to enter into their world. And so we try to show up at practices. Like at Butler, I will just hang around Hinkle and just kind of be a presence. I call it just ministry of presence. Just being present, seeing people, kind of seeing them in their natural element. I think it shows them that I'm here to give you, I'm here to help you, versus if we've got all these high lofty goals and agenda and we want to do this and and all this kind of great stuff, and then we need helpers, we try to plug them in a sense we try to we're asking them to give right to something that like an agenda we have, versus let me just 9 times out of 10 just show up to help you, to give and to disciple you, and all those things.
It's kind of cool to hear you say this, quite frankly, because this is exactly what I do with Comenius. So when I'm not teaching on campus, I sit on the second floor of the campus center across from Caribou Coffee, where there's a couple hundred students gathered.
Many times, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
So there it is. I just sit and people know who I am by now. Other people start saying, hey, you need to go talk to this guy if you have these questions, whatever the case. But I appreciate your concept there about the ministry of presence, being present with people, and not asking them to come to another meeting. We don't have meetings at Comenius. The only meetings I have are with them, and you are with them, not asking them to give more of their time, but being in the place where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
You're listening to Warp and Woof Radio, RadioNext.TV at the Cool Groove site. We're going to take a 1-song break, but when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Matt Williams talking about athletes in action. 1 song. We'll be right back. Facebook Live, of course, we are still here. Thanks for hanging in there with us. I always remind our guests that we are still live, so that there are some of those thoughts at least going through our brains at this juncture. What would you like to do in the next segment, where would you like to go with the discussion? Anything pop into your brain there as we were talking in the first?
I think maybe talking a little bit towards one of the phrases we use a lot is audience of one.
Okay.
Which there's actually a crazy story behind that. We don't have to talk about the back behind story. Because Carson Wentz is a guy who he created the AO1 Foundation, but there's kind of a whole backstory of how Carson Wentz grabbed a hold of the idea of audience of one.
Yeah, that's okay. We can tell the backstory. I love Carson Wentz. I love the Eagles because they beat the Patriots. Thank you very much. Go ahead. Sorry to abscond with your example here.
Just get a passion point.
You did.
But yeah, just talking generally about like how we approach talking about and teaching audience of one, and how that can really shift the mentality for a Christian athlete. That because for many of them, there's a divide between, there's my sport over here and there's my faith over here, and I think there's a desire to figure out how could they come together, but and I'm speaking from my own experience, right? My experience was kind of divided, and I have no clue how to bring them together, so I'm just going to kind of leave them apart. I'm not even going to try to figure this out. And so when we teach and lead and guide and go, hey, there's a way to bring this together. It's like when light bulbs go off, it just completely changes the world in a good way. So yeah, this is something we're passionate about.
Nice.
Trying to think of what else.
Well, the example that I always think about, the first times we talked, I can't remember if you or I brought it up, but was the interview with Tom Brady.
Oh, sure.
And you said you use that clip constantly with students. Yeah. So let's touch on that as much as I, loathe the Patriots. I still.
When the enemy needs Jesus, right?
That's right. So yes, all of those of you who are listening up in New England, we do love you dearly. But some of us in Indianapolis do have some problems with your team. Yes. Anyway, so there's some.
Sure.
Yeah, I had to get that out. You noticed that it kind of erupted. Yeah, we're gonna get a picture here.
Okay.
I got the candid while you're talking shots. Mark, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to tell her about your little fascinating pretty self. I wouldn't do that in front of this athlete.
He calls me the pretty one.
We were the twins, so we're in pictures together. Okay. My little lady friend, who's that good looking guy?
No, he's married.
We're going to give him the pretty day.
Yeah. So he's been teasing me for 4 years. We've been together for 4 years.
He used to blush, now he's used to
I just laugh. Yeah, 4 years we've been together doing this. And it's been a great ride. I've really enjoyed it. I've learned a ton from HB about, not just about all the different people that are in Indy, and we share contacts and that kind of thing, but it's more about just being fluid in conversation.
It's kind of like, deeper than that, kind of like what you guys are talking about. When people don't know, they just don't know. Yeah. So a lot of times we're sitting up here trying to figure something out instead of, getting together and learning something out, if that makes sense.
Right.
But get bigger in it when you can learn it. And, a lot of times we could go right there and just ask questions and intermingle and find out, they ain't that bad, but I wonder why they do that. Well, why don't you go ask them? I know why we as African Americans like food. We gather around food, music, sports, just like you were saying, because what you're indoctrinated to is what you do.
Yeah.
It ain't that difficult.
It's not rocket science.
It ain't rocket science, but well, we make it.
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
We make it tough, man.
That's for sure.
So this is it's like an internet radio station?
It is, absolutely.
And
that's radio, social media marketing is what we do. And pretty much anything. I just put the new post out there. We got about 12 different subject matters that we're concerned about. Everything from mental health awareness to faith-based initiatives, small businesses getting off the ground, grassroots nonprofits, all of that.
HB's been doing this for 8 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man.
So that's the reason why when I said to you this morning, thanks for pushing out all those folks. That's what internet radio does. We're not something you can turn on a dial. but it's all based on who you think is going to be interested in hearing this. We come in afterwards. But that kind of sets you up, helps you to understand why pushing it out is so important. Try to get this across to people that are here. So that's why I said what I did to you today.
Wheeler Mission, Neighborhood Fellowship, and Coffee USA. Doing good is not just a tagline. Doing good is a Christian way of life. Work with Woof Radio from the Comenius Institute, where Christian wisdom and everyday life meet.
And we are back, Warp and Woof Radio, RadioNext.TV at the Cool Groove site every Wednesday from 11 to 11:50, gathering guests in and around Indianapolis who are doing good Christians based on Titus 3, 1, 8, and 14. This week, Matt Williams is here with us talking about athletes in action and the importance of the kind of work that they do at Butler University, but in and around Indianapolis and, of course, around the world. Athletes in Action is a universal group. So, Matt, let's come back to something that we were talking about during the break, which was the audience of one concept. Kind of break that down for us. What does that mean? Why it's important, Athletes in Action, and maybe some of the historic precedent, and maybe somebody that all of us know that actually does something with it now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, audience of one is just basically it's the concept of who or what do you worship. And so, really, when you talk theologically about it, it's the truth of when God tells us in Scripture, "You shall have no other gods besides me." Idolatry, if you will. Right?
Yes.
And so a lot of what we do is we take biblical concepts and we just package them with sport language or mentality, and we just teach it in a way that's a little bit more digestible. So that's the approach or the idea. So audience of one is really kind of the main thing that we try to help our athletes understand, and understanding that really if they could grab a hold of that and they could start to see their sport as a gift from God, that it's a talent that they have, right? Jesus talks about parable talents,
right.
That whole story, and investing and doing well with it. So if they really view their sport as a gift to be stewarded, if you will, to be a good steward with it, versus for many athletes, and even Christian athletes, they slip into this mentality of, I need to gain meaning and purpose from my sport. I need to have success. I need to be a starter. I need to make it to the next level. I need people to praise me for having a great game, which is a double-edged sword, because if you have a great game, great. A horrible game, and you get on Twitter, you might as well just quit. Delete your account, right? Because you're going to get blown up. And so, instead of looking to your sport for affirmation, in a sense, looking to it as an idol. Because idols always overpromise and underdeliver, right?
No, nice line, yeah.
I stole that from pastors.
That's okay. Yeah, that's all right. Keep pumping them out, man.
But if we see it as a gift from God, a talent to be used and stewarded, then it's a game changer. Then it's a way in which you can worship the Lord versus having it pull you away from your faith.
It strikes me as I hear you talk about that there was a comment that you and I had before in some of our other conversations about a famous interview with Tom Brady. And this Tom Brady interview was kind of meshed that concept of what you just brought forward here, the meaning and purpose of life, with the athletics itself. Tell us about that interview and how you use that.
Sure. Yeah. It's out there. It's on YouTube. Just Google it. Tom Brady. I think it was a CBS. Maybe it was a 60 Minutes interview. It was a while back. This was after he had won, I think it was number 3. And essentially, what they're interviewing, talking, and the guy says, "Hey, what next?" And Brady's like, "Well, I guess I'll just go try to get another one." And they basically Brady launches into this whole It's almost you kind of almost feel like he's letting you into a window into his soul. You can just feel it. And he's going, "Man, I've got 3 Super Bowl rings and all that's great, but I'm just sitting here going, there's got to be more." And he said, "But I don't know what it is, so I'm just going to go get another Super Bowl ring." And I'm just, you just go, your heart goes out, even in if you hate Tom Brady, right? Like your heart goes out.
We
to
love you,
him.
Tom. We just don't like your team. That's all. Yeah. So.
Yeah, your heart goes out to him just because he's a human. He's someone made in
Right.
God's image, right?
Right. Yeah.
So we desire for him to have something more.
Right.
So yeah, we play that clip and talk to, because guys feel that, especially football guys especially feel that.
Yeah.
So we try to use that as an illustration to there is something more.
Sure. Yeah. And this concept of something more to have meaning and purpose, everybody seeks this. It doesn't matter what, or who you are. I mean, we could be talking about quilting clubs. If quilting was a national pastime and everybody was just frothing at the mouth for quilting, it would just be another avenue by which we could do discipleship. We could do evangelism. So let's talk for a minute about the necessity of being where you're at, the thing that you're really passionate about, and giving yourself to that. Obviously, for you, it's athletics. For me, it's academics. Let's talk about that. How important is it that we follow people where they are at, or meet them where they are, instead of trying to make them be something or do something or participate in something that they really don't care about? Why is that so powerful and important? Maybe you can tag that into athletics, but just generally speaking, as a Christian, why is that so powerful?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. I think I said this earlier, that people really want to be pursued, because I think it's when you pursue someone, that expresses by your actions that you care about them. And even just when you talk about it from the Bible, Jesus did that with so many people.
Yeah.
The disciples, right? He called his disciples from where they were at. He said, drop your nets, leave your boats, leave your family, right? Come follow me. And even just the way that Jesus met people in the little snippets we get where he does miracles, he's not requiring them to kind of clean themselves up before he touches them and heals them, right? And that's what makes the Pharisees so bad, is that it kind of blows up their whole worldview. So I think just, pursuing people on their terms, if you will, or meeting them, sometimes quite literally physically meeting them on their turf, speaking to them in a way that they understand, language they understand. I think all that kind of weaves together to really create, for me, the heartbeat is having a missionary mindset, in the sense of, pursuing people and bringing the good news to them in a way that they can go, oh, okay, I see that.
You just happen to do it at a gymnasium.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, that's,
or on a field.
Or on a field,
whatever
or
it is.
next to the pool, or whatever the case might be. Yeah, so our real interest, obviously, is in people, but we meet people where they're at. We have this tendency, however, sometimes to think that we need to draw them to what we're doing at the moment.
Yeah.
Instead, we need to go to them.
Right.
So when you think about this, I'm going to give you a minute to think about stories, and I'm going to ask you to tell us some stories. You don't have to tell us names of people or whatever, but people that you've engaged, that you've seen change, that maybe haven't become believers, but have begun to think about this as an issue. Just for my part in this, one of the big issues I face constantly in academics is understanding what it is that, let's say, for instance, a professor is really concerned about, what their field of study is. And I really then want to focus on that, or students for that matter, whatever the case. Just give you a snapshot of this while Matt's still thinking about stories. One of the things that happened, one of the many things that happened this last semester in the spring was a couple of young ladies came to me at the table and said, hey, we're doing this thing on health. We have a class on health, and we have to deal with the issue of ethics. And our professor told us that, ethics was basically based on a group or a government edict, and that other people will tell us what's right and wrong. How do we deal with that from a Christian point of view? And so I basically gave a 30-minute teaching with all I had was my legal pad, but I kept scrolling notes like I was writing on a whiteboard, giving them some instruction about how to think differently about this. Now, that's what I do, some of what I do anyway. From your vantage point, some stories about students that you've engaged and what has happened to them. Tell us about some of that.
Yeah. Oh man. So another thing about who we are as Athletes in Action is that I mentioned that there will be a Christ follower on every team, every sport, every nation. And our mission is that to build spiritual movements through the platform of sports, so that everyone knows someone who truly follows Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea there, and that's not just an AIA thing, that's also broadly a crew thing as well. That everyone knows someone who truly follows Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea there is, or I don't know what's popped in my head, but where I grew up, people say "idea." It's very southern. The idea is that because here's the thing, athletes especially, because of the nature of what they do, they feel like, and I'm speaking just from my personal story as well, they feel like that if they kind of have to put up this strong front, because in athletics, the strong survive, if you will, in a sense. And so they feel like that in their life in general, they have to put up this constant strong front. But in reality, as we know in everyone's life, there's all kind of stuff going on below the surface, mentally, there's all kind of, especially nowadays with college athletes, all kinds of mental health issues and just emotional distress about, again, are they going to start? Is their team going to win? Can they handle everything they have on their plate?
Right. Yeah.
And so there's all this stuff bubbling underneath the surface, but they got this cool cat mentality on the surface, right? And inevitably, time and time again, what I see is it will take one thing to kind of burst the dam. To whether it's an injury, that's oftentimes the case. An injury, maybe they sort of get demoted, right? They get benched, or their career ends. And that's kind of what happened to me. Was my career ended? I had some medical stuff going on, so I had to end my career, and so I just really wrestled with my identity. But our hope and our vision is that when that happens, that there would not even be a question in their mind. When the spiritual questions and the desire to seek out spiritual truth bubbles up to the surface, that they immediately would know, oh, my teammate Mike or Danny or whatever, right? My teammate, the one who really follows Jesus, they're the one that I need to go talk to about these spiritual questions I have, these things that I don't know where to go.
So when I hear you talk about this, I'm going back to Carson Wentz, and immediately, as soon as I think of Carson Wentz, I think of Nick Foles. And right after the Super Bowl victory, there's this picture of them praying by themselves in a room, apart from all the hoopla. I mean, if there's ever a statement about this is what we truly believe is important in life. And these guys are going to school. I mean, they're going to seminary now. I mean, they're taking seminary classes. This is just an amazing thing to me.
Next level.
Yeah. So you think about some of these folks that really do have an understanding of their identity. They do get it. And yeah, they're making millions of dollars, and I get that. But I don't know that anything would change for Nick Foles or Carson Wentz if they got away from football.
Well, you make a great point there, because you just hit a passion point of mine, actually, because I talk a lot with our students about what does Philippians 4:13 really mean? Because so many times, and it's actually this little, if I'm being honest, kind of a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah, go
so
for
many
it.
times with Christian athletes especially, and this happens a lot, where people just rip a verse out of context, right, and just kind of use it for whatever their agenda is.
Right.
But I'm gonna knock on Christian athletes because I live in that world.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
But we kind of take that verse and, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, right? And we kind of use that as sort of this, like, I'm just sort of like, get some spiritual juice, and right. Get out there and go get it, right? Or I'm going to sort of claim this victory ahead of time if you're got that bent, But what's interesting is the context of that verse, and you know this, is that Paul's making the point that whether he has everything or has nothing, the secret is contentment in Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And that it is Christ who strengthens him to have the contentment regardless of his situation.
Yeah.
Right?
And within the context of that passage, Paul is saying, I know what it's like to have nothing, and I know what it's like to have everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so he's saying, whether I have plenty or I have nothing, the secret is contentment in Christ, and that Christ can strengthen me to do all things. Christ can strengthen me to have contentment in all things. And so back to your point about Wentz, whether they're, I think Wentz is a guy, and there's many out there, but Wentz is a guy who has truly got it in the sense of whether I win the Super Bowl or I'm done with my career and no one wants me, and I'm sort of an outcast, right? I'm still content, right? I'm still content in who I am in Christ because he defines me, not my success or my lack of success.
Right.
So.
Yeah. It's an amazing thing to consider how somebody's life can be so changed from the inside out that way. When you think about, just because we're talking about these guys, when you think about these great NFL athletes who, as you suggest, get it. I mean, they are believers, and they are people who live their belief system passionately. They just simply do it through football because that's what they're given to. It's a marvelous thing to watch and see it when it happens. And obviously we see people that fall away or don't do it as well as maybe somebody like Foles and Wentz do. But to have those kinds of examples before us, I think are really powerful. So let's talk for just a minute about the necessity of example and why that's important to an athlete. I mean, we talked earlier about fat heads and that kind of stuff, and it was kind of a good laugh line there. But when we talk about the issue of example and imitation, what is it that can draw athletes like you work with toward that opportunity to see their life as truly contented in Christ through the examples of other athletes? Do you bring them in? Do you have, tell stories about them, watch YouTube videos? How does that happen? And how do young athletes look up to these folks who really seem to have it together?
Yeah, it's a combination of things. Some of it is trying to expose them to, professional athletes who are truly walking with the Lord and kind of get it, so to speak, to kind of paint a picture for them of, just the other day I was messaging a basketball guy and I was on Instagram and, there's a thing that gets posted and, this professional basketball player is talking about how since he started reading his Bible and praying in the locker room before the game, now he really has this sense or this feeling that God's with him on the court. And that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Right? That's one of the things we talk about as well with Audience of One is that if you're playing with an audience of one, it's not that you're playing for God or that you have to perform for God. It's that you've invited God into or onto the field to play with you in a sense.
Yeah.
If that kind of makes sense. And so,
yeah, certainly.
there's a sense of doing this with God instead of, God's up there. And this is what's so unique about, what you've kind of been teaching us in class a little bit of like what's unique about the Christian worldview is that God is both fully holy, but also fully personal, right? So God can still be fully holy in who he is, but he can also be with you on the field. That's completely unique to Christianity. But so we try to, back to your question, we try to weave some of that in of some of those pro athletes. But we also, honestly, I think what's probably more powerful is when they see their peers doing it.
Oh, okay. People around the court.
That's a whole
with
other
them.
thing that I'm passionate about actually is peers really helping each other to live it out. And that is so transformational in the sense that it will move beyond just their time playing sports. And it will help them and serve them, hopefully, as they move on and graduate and then get into the quote-unquote real world. And, hopefully they're in a local church and they're serving the church. Hopefully it will teach them how to seek out their peers and to open up and be honest and real, and have kind of, if you will, peer-to-peer discipleship, right? Where we're helping each other to sharpen, iron sharpens iron, right?
Right. Yeah.
So we're helping each other. So I actually think that peer-to-peer level is probably the most powerful.
Okay.
So we try to facilitate that as much as we can.
That is really a statement that should be talked about a lot more, about the imitation process. Isn't just somebody who's made it big, as it were, but folks that are right next to you on the court, sweating with you, and bleeding with you sometimes, with all of the stuff that you have to go through. If you were going to leave us with something, let's say, if I tell you have 60 to 90 seconds to tell us what you really want to make sure everybody remembers. It can be a passion point, as you've suggested, something that really kind of floats your boat, gets you down the road, makes you get up in the morning, whatever the case, pick a metaphor. What would you like to tell us?
Just personally, my passion, what gets me out of bed is actually the Great Commission. When Jesus talks about go therefore and make disciples of all nations, and I just happen to find myself doing that through reaching athletes because, as we talked about earlier, I think that because of our culture and the way our culture is set up, you can either say that's not fair, or you can say, well, it is what it is, and so we're going to use it as a tool, right? Find myself seeing athletics as this kind of accelerator for the Great Commission, or can potentially be for the Great Commission. So that's just my kind of personal heartbeat and passion. It's not necessarily a charge or anything, but even though we are focusing and zeroing in on college student athletes,
right.
We really see ourselves as contributing a very, very small slice, but contributing to the overall Great Commission.
Yeah. And the manifestation of discipleship, what that's going to mean for these young people in life to come, as they continue through life. This has been a powerful 45 minutes, man. Thanks so much for spending time with us. Really grateful for this. Every Wednesday from 11 to 11:50, you hear an interview from a different person from around Indianapolis, a Christian who is doing good. We're grateful for Matt Williams today for coming in, stopping by to chat with us a little bit about what he does with athletes in action. Next week, we'll be doing the same thing with another guest. Really grateful for all of those who step up to the plate. If you're ever interested in connecting us to people around Indianapolis that you think, hey, Mark, this person needs to be on the show, let's see what we can do about getting them on. Please personal message me, text me, email me at echo1957@gmail. However you want to get in touch with me, just let me know. Folks from around Indianapolis that are doing good, Christians who are actually doing the Great Commission. Maybe that would be a good thing. Thanks again, Matt, for your time today. And we are going to be back next week. Looking forward to that. Until then, we'll see you.